I'd like to start with is the question that I don't think I've ever heard you asked, although it fascinates me, and I know these men do media all the time, but I want to know if maybe in turn you could tell us, what's your origin story with the set of ideas that leads us toward superabundance?
It really starts in 1976 when I was born in the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic. It was as horrible as you might think. And then really in 1989, we, as a family, we are first allowed to go to the West, Christmas in Vienna. And it literally is like stepping out of a black and white movie into color film. I started being interested in economic history in college when a very smart and interesting man, a professor of mine, gave me Rostovtsev's social and economic history of the Roman Empire. So I started thinking about what life was like, not only in communism versus capitalism, but also what life was like in ancient past as opposed to now, and how much better off we were. And then finally, Matt Ridley's book in 2010, The Rational Optimist, alerted me to the fact that there was a wealth of statistics out there that I didn't know about how the world was improving. And so that all came together in 2012 when I started working on human progress.
1980 comes along, and I read George Gilder's stuff, and he's talking about entrepreneur creativity, and it's the center of our world is really these creative people that are given the freedom to have a go at it. And then Julian Simon, he came to our university and he gives this little talk, and that's right when the bet happened. And he makes this real fundamental question. If we were running out of stuff, why is life expectancy increasing, and why are things getting cheaper? And it's like, that is a really good question. And so from then on, I really was just transfixed by this idea that resources and population have this positive relationship, not a negative relationship. Look, I think the issue is, in economics, we made, I think, two fundamental errors at the beginning. We tried to be like physicists, and we're out there counting atoms. And it's not atoms, it's knowledge. Knowledge is what makes atoms resources. And so moving away from atoms to knowledge, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is we tried to measure things with money. And money is, for all of its benefits, it's not a very good measuring stick. It's time. Time is really what we should measure things with. So moving from counting atoms with money to measuring the growth in knowledge with time, that is the fundamental idea. And that idea, I think, can make a contribution to economic thinking.
And as for me, I think, so the original paper that Gale refers to was a plain, good old looking at prices of commodities adjusted by inflation. And the positive relationship between population growth and resource prices that Julian Simon identified still held. But then once Gale told me about time prices, and once we ran the first calculations, and we realized what just the magnitude of the decline of the price of resources relative to wages, at that point I thought, okay, this could potentially be really interesting to other people.
What about students, Gale? You have a special captive audience. How has this type of work been received among younger people, students, people interested in economic ideas?
Yeah, I think we don't recognize how depressed some of these young people are today, with what they've been told about their futures. And so being able to go into a classroom and say, look, I know this is what you've been told, but you got to listen to Elon Musk. And he said three things. He said, there are not enough people, and resources will be fine. And then he says, please look at the numbers. And so here's the numbers. Here's the numbers that you should look at. And then here's what those numbers mean. Here's a theory that connects these ideas, these facts together. And that fundamental idea is that human beings are our ultimate resource. And we have this ability to lift one another. if we have this freedom to innovate. And our future, there has never been a better time than today to create more life. Let me add just a real quick story. I tell my students, look, Steve Jobs his father was born in Syria, and he was adopted. And he was fortunate that his parents were in San Jose, and he grew up in that area that was very, very entrepreneur, creative friendly. But imagine what his life had been like, and our lives would be like if he had been raised in Syria. And then the follow-up question is how many Steve Jobs are in Syria today and all over the planet that have this creative ability, but they are inactive? They're not activating their creative ability because they have a culture and a political system that's really, really not entrepreneur creative friendly.
And perfect example of that is China. China has been the most populous country since 220 BC, until like last year when India overtook China. But it hasn't been prosperous. It has been dirt poor until very recently. So that shows you that having just more people is not enough. They also have to have the incentive structure and live within a culture that allows them to flourish. One more anecdote on kids. I was in Chile a couple of months ago.
Please.
And so we already know statistics that tell us that young people are depressed and anxious. I was in Chile a couple of months ago, and I spoke at a university of Concepcion, university in Concepcion, and an 18-year-old kid came to see me afterwards and told me how important our work was for him because his friends are depressed every time. I'm not kidding, this happened. Every time they want to buy a new pair of shoes, new shirt, or take a short flight to go to Argentina or somewhere, they feel they're destroying the planet. They've been told they are the cancer on the planet. These are children we are talking about. It's just so utterly, fundamentally immoral and evil.
I think part of it is, who do we kind of elevate in our culture? And when I grew up, it was these entrepreneurs were the heroes. Steve Jobs, was this hero, and we really set those guys on pedestals. And well, other than Elon today, who do you think about?
Well, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
Deidre McCloskey, Johann Norberg, Marian, Tupy, that's who I elevate.
Yeah. We're working the idea world, but we've got to move beyond the idea world to the action world. And then I think the other issue is we have kind of institutionalized envy. And that's a very bad thing. We didn't really, I'm an old guy, my future's behind me, but we didn't have this envy problem that I think we're afflicted with today. And it's been institutionalized. And so part of that is, look, we need to flip this, and we need to re-elevate these people that are creators. And then we need to think about where envy takes us. It's not a good place. And everybody can participate. Everybody can participate in this world where we become creators. We've got the time to do that. And that's I think, this cultural thing that begins individually with our sphere of influence, but then rising through the culture to have this effect where we have leaders that are really speaking to that. Those are the people that we should be encouraging and supporting. And unfortunately today, it's very hard to find somebody that's really doing that.
The classical inverse of envy, which is the worst of the sins, is the worst of the vices, is charity. And charity is easiest with abundance. And I want to thank you both for what you've been doing for now a decade and doing together for half a decade. This is a community that you're now part of forever. And we will be charitable in making sure that more and more people understand your work, get access to your work, and I thank you for being part of this and being here today. If everyone could help me with a charitable round of applause, we will conclude our program. you.